tonight. As more details emerge about that now infamous phone call between the president and his Ukrainian counterpart, the push for impeachment divides the country. And the Supreme Court prepares to start its new term. How the fight to overturn Roe v. Wade could take center stage. Plus, protests turn violent in Hong Kong as China marks the 70th anniversary of communist rule. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. Well, the House may not be in session, but the impeachment battle wages on in Washington. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm Jenna Browder.
And I'm John Jessup. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is vowing to block efforts by Congress to, quote, bully State Department officials into testifying about the president's phone call with Ukraine.
And CBN News White House correspondent Ben Kennedy has tonight's top story. Ben?
Jenna, John Pompeo accuses House Democrats of trying to intimidate State Department officials. President Trump is also on the defense today, reiterating that his call with Ukraine's president was perfect. Pompeo pushing back on efforts to depose former and current State Department officials by committees involved in the impeachment inquiry into his boss, President Trump. Pompeo tweeting that he's concerned with aspects of the request that can be understood only as an attempt to intimidate, bully, and treat improperly distinguished professionals of the Department of State, adding, "Let me be clear, I will not tolerate such tactics. I will use all means at my disposal to prevent and expose any attempts to intimidate the dedicated professionals whom I am proud to lead and serve alongside at the Department of State." It's reported Pompeo listened in on that July 25th phone call with Ukraine's president, where Trump asked for help to investigate his political rival, Joe Biden. This as the commander-in-chief's personal lawyer also faces scrutiny and a subpoena. Democrats want Rudy Giuliani to turn over any Ukraine-related documents after he was implicated in the whistleblower's complaint 30 times. It's unclear if he'll comply.
I don't know. I'm weighing the alternatives. I'll kind of like go through it. I'll get all my evidence together. I'll get my charts.
The president back on Twitter today calling the entire ordeal just another Democrat hoax. Now, President Trump says he wants to find and meet the whistleblower, the person at the heart of this inquiry. But we've heard from the whistleblower's attorney who says, yeah, that likely will not happen. John, Jenna?
All right, thank you, Ben. The recent talk about impeachment has fueled the campaign fundraising drive. Some of the 2020 candidates released third quarter numbers out today. Bernie Sanders tops the list, pulling in $25.3 million from about 1.5 million donors. The average contribution, about $18. Pete Buttigieg pulled in just under $20 million, $5 million less than what he raised in the second quarter. And Cory Booker took in $6 million. That's a 30% increase.
And here with us now are Gabby Orr, White House reporter at Politico, and CBN News chief political analyst David Brody. Both of you, thank you for joining us. Gabby, so Elizabeth Warren, she is eating into Bernie Sanders' progressive base, but these new numbers that he is pulling, he is still a force to be reckoned with.
He absolutely is, and I think that these numbers show, especially the amount of donors that the $25.3 million figure came from, really shows that there is still a great deal of enthusiasm behind him, and conventional wisdom would suggest that Elizabeth Warren is slowly pulling away from his progressive base of supporters. But I do think that a lot of the gain that we've seen her have over the summer has been drawing away from Kamala Harris as opposed to Bernie Sanders. That's been borne out in polls. I've talked to Democratic strategists who have also said that sort of the Sanders shift to Warren is a bit overplayed, and I expect that we'll continue to see that just based on his fundraising numbers.
David, how do these numbers translate to the rest of the field, especially those like Kamala Harris and others who are polling in the single digits?
Well, Kamala Harris has some shake-up problems of her own with her campaign, and Pete Buttigieg did very well, 19+ million, though he's having traditional fundraisers along the way, so it kind of skews that number a little bit. Bernie's number more organic. I think this could be a potential problem for Joe Biden here, because Bernie continues to attract a lot of money. Elizabeth Warren, we know, is attracting a lot of money. That's where the pulse is. That's where the oxygen is. Clearly, that's where the money is, too, though Biden is doing pretty well, but he's doing it traditionally. So we'll see how if the money follows the polls. But I got to tell you, I still go back to 2016. I think that was Bernie's year. He can talk to the DNC and take it up with them in a lawsuit if he wants to. I'm just kidding around with the lawsuit. But Elizabeth Warren seems to have the momentum still.
David, turning to impeachment, Republicans reportedly raised $15 million in the wake of this impeachment inquiry. The RNC and Trump campaign pulling in more than $210 million since the beginning of this year. No matter who the eventual nominee is, that's a huge war chest to challenge.
For sure, and they're going to need every penny of it because they're in a whole lot of trouble. And when I mean trouble, I'm talking about political trouble. I mean, there is an impeachment that is pretty much not only just underway, but it looks like it's going to happen. I mean, there's no way Nancy Pelosi can go back at this point unless there's some sort of an anti-smoking gun the other way, which I don't see that happening. So they'll need all that money, and they're doing a great job of it. But, you know, Donald Trump can easily just put his foot in his mouth, and that'll be the end of that. So we'll see. I think that there's a lot that remains to be seen here.
Turning to the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, reportedly was in on that Ukrainian phone call with the president. Pompeo struck a defiant tone today. Gabby, do you think it's possible that we might see his subpoena for him, just like we've seen with President Trump's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani?
With the way that things have gone so far, I expect that almost everybody in Trump's orbit is going to face a congressional subpoena or at least be invited to testify behind closed doors or publicly before the House Judiciary Committee. And I do think that the more we know about whether Pompeo played a role in that July 25th call with the Ukrainian leader will indicate whether or not he does face a subpoena. If he's in close proximity to this latest, the transcript that was released and had some involvement, it's more likely that he will be drawn into this by Democrats. If he wasn't, then I do think that the odds decrease a bit. But, you know, Rudy Giuliani has faced a subpoena now. Corey Lewandowski has been invited to testify, unrelated to Ukraine, but still was invited to testify. I just think that that's the trajectory that we're on.
And a quick little 10-second addendum to that, in addition to just say that this is a run-out-the-clock strategy. I don't think there's any question about it. All these witnesses, all these subpoenas. Mike Pompeo, I'll get back to you October 4th, October 11th, October 18th. Go ahead. You guys try to impeach me in January 2020 is what the administration is going to say, and that raises a whole different issue.
Yeah, Gabby, really quickly, you're out with a new piece about Vice President Pence being ready in the wings should President Trump be impeached. That's a big if, a big should. This has created some tension between the two.
It absolutely has. You know, I spoke with a number of people who are close to the vice president, and some of them were sort of taken aback by that comment that the president made during his press conference at the UN General Assembly when he said to reporters, you should look at Mike Pence's phone calls with his Ukrainian counterparts. Look at the conversations that he's had with Ukrainian officials. There were some people inside the White House who told me that was totally innocent. It was just the president saying, you know, there's nothing to hide in my phone calls. There's nothing to hide in my vice president's phone calls. But there were others who took that as the president suggesting that if the time comes and he feels threatened by his vice president or threatened by impeachment, that he could very well throw him under the bus.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Gabby and David, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Well, two Trump administration asylum policies went before a federal appeals court today. The Ninth Circuit Court is looking at a challenge into the controversial Remain in Mexico policy. The policy requires those seeking asylum to stay across the border while their cases are being considered. Around 42,000 migrants have been sent back to Mexico under this rule. Today's challenge comes from 11 asylum seekers who say they are in danger in Mexico. Also in front of the court today, an administration policy preventing those who illegally cross the border from seeking asylum. Well, the Supreme Court begins its new term next week, and already crowds are gathering outside. As Paul Strand shows us, anti-abortion advocates showed up in force today.
Many folks say legalized abortion, it's settled law. Give up trying to get rid of it. But a bunch of people showed up here at the Supreme Court to say, we disagree. It's time to overturn Roe v. Wade. These pro-life partisans unrolled a massive scroll labeled the Moral Outcry, 250,000 signatures calling for the end of Roe.
Will you be a voice? Would you stir up a moral outcry in the land that would provoke the people to see what the Lord's trying to do in the land? And he's trying to overturn something, the shedding of innocent blood.
Organizers hope to gather 1 million signatures through the website moraloutcry.com. They insist that justices actually pay attention to such petitions.
When you sign the petition, you are severely criticizing Roe v. Wade,
And that's one of the reasons itself for overturning a Supreme Court decision. Some accuse pro-lifers of only caring about the unborn, but the Thibaults say they are doing much more. Melinda Thibault says she heard the Lord tell her to let embryos saved from abortion be planted in her womb, which led her to see a bigger potential.
We've walked many couples through newborn adoption, embryo adoption. There's 600,000 embryos waiting for a room.
Also at this rally, women like Cynthia and Lisa, who've gone through with abortion.
Every day, I just remember the abortion. I remember the death of my son, David Emmanuel.
I have 5 children that are missing from my dinner table. Every time I sit down for dinner, there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about my children.
It was a slow form of destruction, not only of my children, but of my soul also. See, the enemy never plays fair. He kills our children and he goes after us at the same time.
Many folks say you can't mess with abortion, it's a right. Others say, what about the rights of those unborn babies? What about the right to life? Paul Strand, CBN News, reporting from the Supreme Court.
Thanks, Paul. Former Dallas police officer Amber Geiger has been found guilty in the murder trial of her 26-year-old neighbor, Botham Jean. The jury returned with its decision today, only deliberating for a matter of hours. The case made headlines when Geiger shot and killed the Dallas worship leader while inside his own home. Geiger says she entered the apartment mistaking it for hers, and she says she thought John was an intruder. For more on the life of Botham Jean, go to cbnnews.com.
The church in China, how the communist country is cracking down on Christianity. Next.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Well, China celebrated the 70th anniversary of its communist revolution with a display of military power. The parade showcased China's growing emergence as an increasingly ambitious global power, highlighting rapidly developing advanced weapons technology, including missiles that reportedly can hit the U.S. in 30 minutes. China's People's Liberation Army is the world's biggest military, with 2 million men and women in uniform.
Meanwhile, it was a full day of chaos and violence in Hong Kong. Protesters there ramping up their efforts and demonstrators spreading out across the city.
And for the first time since the protests began months ago, a protester was shot and wounded during clashes with police. CBN national security correspondent Eric Phillips has been following this developing story. Eric?
Well, Jenna and John, as you may know, the protests in Hong Kong have been ongoing since June. But with the anniversary of the Chinese Communist Party, demonstrations grew larger than they had been before, full of re-energized protesters. But let me call your attention to the video you see right here. One particular episode, it slowed down so you can really see it. An officer shot a protester at short range. Look at that. The protester, a teenager, was shot in the shoulder. This is significant because while police have fired warning shots in the air and used other means like tear gas and water cannons, this is the first time a protester is known to have been shot, signifying an escalation in violence between protesters and police. As it is, demonstrators have hurled bricks and boards and used batons against authorities who have scrambled to maintain order. Also Tuesday, protesters set fire at the front of a government building in another act of defiance. This is all about protesters wanting Hong Kong to operate independently from China.
We come here to show our anger. Carrie Lam actually is a puppet of the single-party rule in China. So we urge the Hong Kong people to fight for democracy.
Over the last 4 months, protesters have disrupted the streets of Hong Kong and held numerous demonstrations. And you might recall about a month ago or so, they clogged the Hong Kong airport, causing the cancellation of more than 150 flights.
Eric, now originally this had to do with the extradition bill. They got that tabled, they got that pulled. So what is it that protesters want to gain now?
Well, they want Hong Kong to operate as a democracy. And as you said, this all started over that extradition bill, which was at first just put on hold, and now it's been effectively pulled back. But that bill said that people could be prosecuted in mainland China, and that kind of sparked all of this. So they're wanting more things in terms of independence from China and democracy. And right now, they're not planning on stopping anytime soon until they get it.
Thank you, Eric. Well, after years of revival, Christianity in China is under assault. Chinese President Xi Jinping views the growing church as a threat to the Communist Party.
He's taking action to shut it down. Police are raiding churches and arresting pastors. George Thomas has more on the ideology that's fueling widespread crackdowns against Christians.
For the last 20 years, CBN News has documented the explosive growth in China's so-called underground or house church movement as millions in this officially atheistic nation converted to Christianity.
Experts say what's been happening in China is part of an unprecedented revival that has practically touched every corner of the country, leading some to predict that China could become the world's most Christian nation by 2030.
But this man wants to prevent that. Since taking power in 2012, China's President Xi Jinping has ordered authorities to shut down any house church not under communist government control.
Massive new wave of persecution has been happening in China.
Bob Fu, with U.S.-based China Aid, is documenting the widespread crackdown.
I'm talking about hundreds of thousands of churches were shut down, pastors were being arrested, and the prayer meeting were being raided.
Pastor Jing Mingri knows harsh tactics firsthand. Jin, who led Zion Church, the largest unregistered congregation in Beijing, refused a government order to install closed-circuit surveillance cameras in the sanctuary. Weeks later, authorities outlawed the 1,500-member church and banned him from preaching.
It is probably the largest incident of the government using public power to apply pressure on the house church in the past 10 years, and it's still going on today.
Bob Fu says the crackdown is part of President Xi's ambition of cynicizing Christianity with Chinese characteristics and insisting that Christians pledge political loyalty to him and the Communist Party.
He is really wanting to take China to the Chairman Mao's old kind of path by exercising more political control and mind control, ideological kind of synthesization into the Communist Party's ideology.
Andrew Nathan of Columbia University says the government views Chinese Christians like dry kindling that could spark a political uprising against the government with the help of outside influence.
They think that foreign forces, the United States, missionaries and so forth, would like to spark up this tinder. So they don't see it only in a domestic context, they see it in a strategic context as well.
As authorities tear down and burn crosses, destroy Bibles, and replace images of Jesus Christ with posters of the Chinese president, Huang He, one of China's most prominent pastors arrested this month, boldly declared that Xi's godlike status was incompatible with the Christian faith and vowed to disobey all laws that go against the Bible. Now, after years of enjoying relative freedom from government interference, Christians like this woman, whose husband is under house arrest, worries about the future climate for China's Christians.
It's painful. The government says that we have religious freedom, but really there is no freedom at all.
George Thomas, CBN News.
Give me that. Bye. Sure, life is busy, but I found a way to make a huge difference in people's lives. I guess you could say I'm changing the world right here from home. I bring medical supplies and doctors to people in need, and dig wells so that villagers can have clean and safe water to drink. I make it possible to preach the gospel in over 100 countries, including right here in America. And when disaster strikes, I'm there, providing food, thank you, and emergency supplies to give people hope again. Every day, CBN and I are making the world a better place. Here you go. My life is hectic, so I joined CBN through Pledge Express. My bank does all the work, and I know that my gift is being used where it's needed most. So become a CBN partner and join Pledge Express, because you can do a world of good right from where you are. Hi, good morning. Are you ready to get started?
Hey, if you're tired and exhausted all day, you can't think clearly, and you really just need a cup or even a pot of coffee to get through your day, then join me, Dr. Josh Axe, for this new series where I'm going to teach you how to transform your diet and use essential oils and supplements to get a better night's sleep.
Get Protect Your Sleep and live your best life with innovative information from 5 leading sleep experts.
If you're not a great sleeper, you can do things to make yourself a great sleeper. If you're already a pretty good sleeper, you can enhance your sleep and be even better.
Discover a sleep-enhancing bedtime routine, how to put insomnia to rest, learn how to relieve pain that disturbs sleep, and much more in Protect Your Sleep.
Everything you do better with a good night's sleep.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Don't miss out on this brand new series.
Years removed from his daily physical training, one Marine Corps veteran is still on the move, hiking from coast to coast.
Amber Strong caught up with him and shows us how he's using his cross-country trek to raise awareness and bring hope to fellow veterans.
Shane Johnson is out for his morning hike, his third this week.
A veteran, best-selling author, motivational speaker on an inspiring journey.
It adds up to more than 7,000 miles over the last 4 years, all with 100 pounds strapped to his back.
So we can pull it, but we're definitely not putting it on.
Oh my goodness, that's insane. He's covered a lot of ground, from Ground Zero in New York City to the United States Capitol and back. Today's hike brought him here to the National Museum of the Marine Corps in Quantico, Virginia, a natural fit for the formerly enlisted Marine. The hikes are similar to his life's journey, filled with many ups and downs. In his early 20s, a severe motorcycle accident almost killed him, flatlining 3 times, his first miracle. After the Marines, Johnson saw success as a mortgage banker until the 2008 recession.
I ended up losing everything, became homeless, and I ended up moving from Florida to North Carolina. It was about 2 years where I was going through that struggle.
That stint with homelessness taught him a thing or two. It also inspired him to spend the last 4 years hiking across America, delivering speeches and raising awareness about the roots of homelessness.
When you think homeless, you think panhandlers, drug addiction, or alcohol. When it's really not. It's it's common America. It's middle-class America. It's single-parent homes or two-family homes that are just barely getting by, choking on what they think is the American dream.
And you're going across country?
Yes, sir.
Fantastic.
On his travels, he's met a lot of fellow vets. Now he's challenging them to get back in the fight.
Well, everybody's having problems transitioning. They can't get a job, and getting out so tough. And I'm like, okay, but so was the Marine Corps. I mean, I can't speak for the other branches, but so was the Marine Corps. It's supposed to be tough. That's what makes us earn that title of being a Marine.
Using that 100-pound vest, he's destined to break a couple of world records along the way. But he says it's about more than that.
The burden of leadership that we carry that it seems that most people want to take off because it's heavy and it hurts.
Johnson says it's his duty to remain always faithful and carve out a path of compassion and leadership one step at a time. Amber Strong, CBN News in Quantico, Virginia.
Coming up, as Jimmy Carter celebrates a major birthday, a look at what drives the former president's continuing humanitarian service.
We will move the American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem.
As the nations rage, you can stand with Israel.
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
Call 1-800-700-7000 and get to life.
This is our nature as a country.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religious he have, which color he is, this is what I'm doing.
Support Israel in their time of need. Get to Life, now available on DVD. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
And I wish that other people throughout the world could see this side of Israel.
Orphaned Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphaned Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time. Will you join us?
President Jimmy Carter is celebrating a major milestone.
That's right. Today he turns 95 years old. Carter served just one term as president. Since then, he started the Carter Foundation, working to champion human rights around the world. His work in the area earned him a Nobel Peace Prize in 2002. Here at home, he's well known for his work, humanitarian work rather, with Habitat for Humanity. Once telling CBN's Gordon Robertson, faith is what drives his acts of service.
I think it's important for us to actually do things to demonstrate our belief, as Jesus did his whole life. He didn't just preach. You know, his life was devoted to reaching out to the leper or those who were poverty-stricken.
At 95 years old, Carter still teaches Sunday school at Maranatha Baptist Church in his Georgia hometown. Happy birthday to former President Carter, and well wishes.
Absolutely. Well, have a great evening.